Welcome back. If you recall from our last video, we are trying to beat Deltarune without ever using Ralsei. Basically, we need to beat all of the secret and main bosses in each chapter without the use of Ralsei, items, or equipment. Jumping right in, another rule I have added is that with the addition of chapter 2, all of the encounters from this point on, you must try to defeat the enemy with mercy, instead of attacking. This not only makes the challenge more difficult, as we will need to find new or harder ways to spare enemies, as many of the acts which contribute mercy require Ralsei, but not fighting any enemies will keep our HP at the minimum, as you gain HP from defeating enemies through fighting, making the challenge more entertaining. If you recall from last time, after scraping by chapter 1's main challenge, Jevel, we were able to move on to chapter 2, which is where the challenge finally gets real. Here we go. Also, if you do enjoy this kind of content and want to support the channel, then make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, as it helps more than you think. This is a new channel, and actually only the second video, so subscribing helps out a ton. After immediately taking another short nap, we ended up in the Cyberfield, where we met Queen and reunited with Ralsei. After doing some exploration, we came across a bagel stand and came to the big challenge of chapter 2, the Sweet Cap'n Cakes mini-boss. This is by far the hardest fight in chapter 2 for this challenge. Not only do you have to survive their attacks with no armor, but this is actually the tutorial fight which teaches Susie and Ralsei how to act. You know what that means? In order to beat this boss, you need to use Ralsei's R action in order to get all 3 of the enemies dancing, which ends the fight and unlocks the path to progress. So, if we couldn't spare them, then I thought, why don't we try attacking them instead? So, I unsheathed my sword, and they immediately healed. Even after I tried to balance the damage from all of my party members to get multiple enemies down to a fatal amount of HP, they would just heal everybody on the team in the same turn. The fight would have to be completed legitimately. Was this it? Was my dream of simply not using Ralsei bound to a fate of failure? No, of course not. There would be a way. I just needed to find it. So I began my research, scrolling through the Deltarune wiki for days. Okay, not days, but a few minutes at least. First, I tried a glitch called wrong warping, most commonly seen in speedruns to skip straight to the Cap'n Cakes mini-boss instead of progressing through the puzzles, as well as skipping the second sanctuary in chapter 4. By saving, then returning to the title screen and reloading your save file, you entered a state called the wrong warp state, where if you hold X and C at the same time as you walk into a screen transition, then at the very frame the transition plays you turn around, you will be teleported to the default point in the room. By performing this twice in a row, you could skip to the Cap'n Cakes fight. Since sliding down this slope normally comes at the end of the fight, I was hoping there would be a trigger that would open the path if I slid down it without completing the fight, which would allow me to progress while skipping the mini-boss. However, when I returned, the force field remained, and I was stuck yet again. After digging even deeper, I stumbled across a glitch, one that may end up being my salvation. There was a glitch commonly called the door overflow glitch that would allow me to skip straight from the Cyberfield to the Queen's Mansion, completely skipping the mini-boss that required Ralsei and the entire trash zone. However, thinking it over, I realised something. All of the speedruns I saw using this mechanic used it to immediately teleport to the Queen's Mansion, but in order to achieve my goal of defeating all secret bosses, I would need to reach Trash Zone in order to accept Spamton's deal and activate the sequence to unlock his boss fight. There had to be another way. So, with my research hitting a dead end, I began my experimentation. By purchasing 400 bagels, then immediately looking up and interacting with the door, you were able to create a text overflow, resulting in a situation where text boxes showed up on screen, yet you were still allowed to move instead of being locked in place like normal. Interacting with the door in the state allowed you to choose between two options, remaining at Cyberfield or warping to the mansion. However, this wasn't what I was looking for, and after accidentally crashing the game, I tried again. By the way, this glitch is not easy to pull off. You only have a few frames to make two inputs in the right order, which doesn't seem too hard, but the fact that you need to wait around 5 seconds in order to try again gets annoying fast. It took me around 20 attempts to get it on my first try, and it doesn't get easier. After hitting the extremely difficult glitch again, I looked around. Surely somewhere, there could be something that would help me. The only idea that I had would be to find a text box that would unlock more options for my soul to choose from, as it would unlock Trash Zone in the warp door since it appears at the top instead of the left or right, but nothing came to mind. So, at a dead end, I used my secret weapon. It's called spamming. Yep, it's just spamming. I literally just interacted with as many people as possible and tried to see as much dialogue as possible, and just prayed for the best. In the end, I somehow unlocked another option for my soul, allowing me to interact with the door again and warp to the Trash Zone, successfully skipping the run ender. Was it incredibly lucky? Probably. Do I know how to replicate it? No. But that didn't matter now, because that was all in the past, and now the real fun begins. Oh, and by the way, by warping to Trash Zone early, the camera is all messed up for the entire cutscene, so that's nice. After meeting up with Noelle, I was given the choice to take the split path to start the Snowgrave route. What do you mean it's called the Weird Route? Alright, the real name for it is apparently the Weird Route, but that sounds really dumb, so I'm just going to call it the Snowgrave route. This is a route activated through forcing Noelle to freeze every enemy for you, a path of manipulation and destruction. However, I decided to turn away from this route and continue on the regular path for one main reason. If my goal was to truly defeat all bosses in Deltarune, the Snowgrave route was not a viable option, as it removes the final boss fight with Queen at the end of the game, replacing it with a solo Chris fight against a variant of the secret boss Spamton. However, this means that in these fights, Ralsei will not be with us, removing the challenge's one unique aspect and honestly just making it easier. And in that case, what's even the point? Anyway, after stripping Noelle of all of her armor in order to comply with the first bonus challenge, we came to the Birdly mini-boss. Due to Ralsei not being in our party currently, this mini-boss simply turned into a no armor all weapons fight, making it marginally more difficult compared to normal. I mean, I'm absolutely horrendous at this fight, so the lack of defense and extra HP really took its toll on me, but I managed to persevere, and after taking an acting class with Noelle, Birdly was defeated. Next up was the fight with Spamton. However, it was not with the secret boss Spamton. Consider this one to be the prologue. This fight was the reason I couldn't immediately warp to the mansion to finish the game, as here you need to accept this deal to activate the side quest to unlock the secret boss. After handing Ralsei a toy to keep him entertained as the adult progressed and performing a prison break with the help of Lancer, we were finally free to roam the mansion. After warping back to Trash Zone to pick up the key gen from Spamton and reaching the secret room, I entered the basement, powered down the generator, and collected the empty disc. If you're confused by what's happening, I'm currently unlocking Chapter 2 Secret Boss. As stated in Part 1, secret bosses usually require specific steps in order to unlock, and in Chapter 2, you must take Spamton's deal, purchase his keygen from the shop, use it in a secret room to unlock the basement, take the empty disc from the old robot, transfer Spamton's consciousness into the disc, and reinsert it into the robot, beginning the fight. Before the fight began, I made the choice to rebind my keys from the default arrow keys to WASD, and changed my interact button to L. While this seems random, there is a good reason. Since I didn't have any equipment, I would likely perish quite quickly anyways. Therefore, I decided to activate the quote-unquote enraged version of the Spamton fight. By holding down your interact button and then hitting enter, which is another automatically binded interact button, you were able to shoot out big shots at the same speed as normal bullets. However, this would drastically increase Spamton's attack power. Due to the lack of equipment, I decided that the risk Enraged Spamton brings to me was smaller than attempting the fight normally, as the ability gained from Enraging Spamton makes it much easier to avoid most of his attacks entirely. So, rebinding my interact button to L made it much easier to use one hand to hit L and enter instead of reaching across to hit Z, giving me more flexibility in my soul's movement. So, I began the fight. Since I wanted to defeat all of my enemies peacefully, as proven by my long list of recruits, I would need to snap all of Spamton's puppet strings. The main act used for this route is Snap All, contributing 7% to his mercy bar. However, it requires all members of your party, including Ralsei. So I would have to use the individual acts for Chris and Susie to snap wires. However, when I clicked on Susie, her act had disappeared. At first, I was left confused. Unless, did my previous act of skipping the Cap and Cakes fight have some unexpected consequences? It was the fight where Susie and Ralsei first learned how to act, so did skipping it permanently remove their ability? Chris's act alone only contributed 2% of the mercy bar, so I would need to survive around 50 rounds without my party being knocked down. And if Chris got knocked down at any time, I would not be able to make any progress until they got back up. So I began the fight. Here are some highlights. After freeing Spamton and collecting the next Shadow Crystal and the Dealmaker, we said hi to a dog, committed some crimes, played with the Swatchlings, and took a nice long holiday with Ralsei. Then we encountered an intimidating fight. The fight with rules card on the surface level seems difficult without Ralsei. In this fight you must take over more houses than the opponent. When someone cannot make another move, or if all the squares are filled, the person with the most houses wins. This fight seemed especially difficult, as you can only place a maximum of 2 houses per turn without Ralsei, while rules can place much more later on in the fight. However, my fears were not realised, as by quickly spreading your houses to rules' side of the board and ending the fight on your turn, you are guaranteed a win if you are quick enough, as by finishing the fight on your turn, you finish with 2 extra houses, leading to an easy victory. Finally, we made our way to the final boss of Chapter 2, Queen. The first phase of Queen's fight consists of the player needing to free Birdly from the clutches of Queen. Since Ralsei is not required for the act Throw, which is the most efficient method of finishing the fight on a pacifist route, this part of the fight was considerably easy. That is, until the acid shield came up. Every time you finish loosening a set of wires, Queen will put up an acid shield, increasing in size and HP each time. At first it is barely a hindrance, just requiring a few attacks and maybe some toasts in order to remove. However, as the fight drags on, the lack of TP and help from Ralsei you normally get in the fight, such as through defending or attacking, is removed, making it much harder to deal the necessary damage to the shield, as it is more difficult to build up enough TP to use Red or Rude Buster, dragging the fight out much longer. However, through persistence and the determination to not waste 10 minutes of my time, I managed to fully loosen Birdly, finishing the fight. However, this was not the end, as there was one fight left to be had. The final fight against Giga Queen. But that one was just a total pushover. Ralsei isn't even in this fight, and the fight itself is nothing short of easy, So after cyberbullying Queen and having a story time with Ralsei, we managed to yet again seal the fountain. At this point, we've had difficult encounters. We've had impossible puzzles and challenges. We've done research, we've suffered, and we've learned. And so, it is with confidence that I say that we will beat this challenge, and prove that the fluffy Prince of Deltarune doesn't need to move a muscle in order for us to beat the entirety of Deltarune. And with that, we moved on to Chapter 3. If you did enjoy the video, then please consider subscribing, as it helps with the channel's growth a lot. Part 3 will hopefully be released soon, so keep an eye out for that, because the challenge doesn't get easier from here. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I wish you all a pleasant goodbye. Subscribe.